in a few minutes, I think that's one of the places where we have an opportunity to increase our value in the eyes of our consumer that we, as a general rule, don't necessarily do really well. And so so I've been studying it, I've been training it, I've been writing programs around it for a couple of years. And I've been in this business for 31 years. So that idea kind of set me up for this. And so that's really what I wanted to do, is just kind of share that thought with you around that over this next 45 minutes or so. And so if that's what you thought you were coming into, that's what this is. I do have some things that are different in the time of COVID-19. And so that's really why we've called this negotiations in the time of COVID-19, because there are some practices or things that you could do in your practice that would be slightly different from a negotiation standpoint that may give you better results. As we get started though today, I want to get a sense of really what's happening where you're at, because I do know that it's different everywhere. And I'm going to put up a little poll just for you to just answer for me. There's no right or wrong. It's just to give me a general sense of things. And so as I put that up, I'm going to just choose the first poll, and if you want to answer it, it's basically two questions. I want to get a sense of what's been going on for you since March 15th. So just three questions there. And then also, if you are still in the practice of helping buyers and sellers during this time, because I know some aren't and some are and some can't and some can, I just want to get a sense of what you're doing. So if you want to just take a minute, that should have popped up on your screen. Just as negotiations at the time of COVID-19, and just take a moment to answer those questions. Yeah, we got some answers coming in, so that's awesome. And as you're working on that, I'm going to switch my screen around because I do have a little bit of a PowerPoint that I want to show you as we walk through this, because I think that's a better visual. Just a couple logistics. You probably all are very adept at Zoom meetings now, right? Because it seems we live in this format. And yet, just as a reminder, when you came in, everyone was muted. And so to unmute yourself, kind of two ways you can do it. You can go hit the little microphone on the bottom left of your screen, and that will unmute you. Or you can just hold down your space bar. And while that's held down, it unmutes you. And on most computers, a little bit different on tablets. There I would look for the microphone or swipe the bar, and that'll unmute you. If by mistake you get unmuted and there's background noise, it'll pop up for me and I can mute you again too. So don't freak out about that. And you can also shut your camera off if you want, although it's really cool to see everyone's faces because it just makes it more fun for me to be able to see you all if you're willing to do that. So let's do this. I'm going to let the poll keep going for a moment, but I'm going to get that screen share started, and we'll get going into our presentation for the day. Let's see, there's two steps in this that you have to go through because of the way PowerPoint interacts with Zoom, and that is it's a two-step process to get to where I'm going. So let me see if I can do it correctly today in the first try. And I believe I did, yes. All right, so and with the poll, we're gonna keep that going just for a few more minutes because we'll probably have a few folks that'll jump in with us. But the screen you see should just say it's negotiation in the time of COVID-19. And a little bit about who I am. I'm gonna go to the next screen and just give you kind of my contact information. That's one of the things for being in anything I'll do from a training perspective. I always think that you're now in my world. And so you've got access to me, whether it's a question, whether it's a qualification. Some of you have probably taken bold with me over the past 10 years because I've done a fair amount of that training up in your part of the country. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're doing a lot of content up on YouTube on that channel. And then my email is there. I want to talk a moment about the alphabet soup after my name, though. SRS, CRB, and RENE. SRS stands for Seller Representative Specialist. And that is kind of the flip of the ABR, the Accredited Buyer Representative. And it's a newer designation from NAR that is all about being great at representing sellers. And so that was in 2014. I actually was part of the group that brought that designation into NAR's family of designations. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that we've got that now representing, training for seller representing versus only buyers. CRB is the Council of Real Estate Brokerage Managers. I've been a broker owner now since 2003, and so I earned that designation. And this one is the one I wanted to get to, RENE. It's a certification from NAR called Real Estate Negotiating Expert, RENE, and it's a 2-day course that if you take it once, you're certified. It's a really good course from a negotiation perspective. It's being rewritten right now. In fact, I'm one of the people working on the rewrites with the organization around updates for today. And that's where I'm so passionate about negotiation, because I do think that there's a great opportunity for us as real estate professionals to get better at that piece. And I'm going to demonstrate a few of those in our time together today. And then I'm a bold coach for my Keller Williams folks in the call. I've been on the road doing that since 2010. And I've done a lot of other things within the Keller Williams organization. So I've been around for a while and I've done a lot. It's a great organization. I've had great opportunities. So that's just who I am. Now, one of the things we've got, and I just wanted to, when we got hit with COVID-19, and in our state, it's called Safer at Home. I launched a website with my market center. So I have 2 Keller Williams offices here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's just called KW Pivot 2020, and we're putting some resources there that are open to anybody. So there's a lot of what I'll cover today. You could go there and get some documents that have been created around best practices, all of that. So you may want to jot that down. No obligation, doesn't require you to register, just there as a resource should you find it of value. So I just thought I'd mention that. Let's jump into this whole conversation around negotiation. I thought to begin with today, we should probably just define what we mean by that. And so I thought that's the starting spot. So negotiation is a bargaining, a give or take process between 2 or more parties, each with their own aims, needs, and viewpoints, seeking to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or to resolve a conflict. That's the business dictionary definition. Now, there's a key piece of this that I think is important, especially in this time for us in our business. And it's this piece. It's the each have their own aims, needs, and viewpoints. Now, when I say each in this definition, it's everybody involved in the negotiation, not just in most of ours, a buyer and a seller. It could be the other negotiator, and quite frankly, it's us as well. So we've got to recognize that that's at play at all points in time in negotiations, is it's all parties involved because everybody has different goals, aims, needs, and viewpoints. And so if we could start with that as kind of our baseline, I think it helps with our conversation today. Now, there's kind of 2 schools of thought around what a successful negotiation is, right? There's a belief that a successful negotiation is win-win. And there's a belief that a successful negotiation is a win-lose as long as your client was the winner. Now, this is one of our first major points in this whole conversation today is I'm of the belief, and I think especially in this time, that a win-win negotiation is what we should always be striving for. Why is that? Well, here's what I've discovered. Right now with things so much in flux that, from one day to the next, especially a couple of weeks ago, the whole landscape could change, like what we could do and what we couldn't do, what we could service and what we couldn't service, whether your Secretary of Deeds office or your recorder would take deeds so you could close transactions, or whether they were closed and you couldn't. So things are, and that's still somewhat going on, right? A home inspector that can't get out and do a home inspection because the homeowner won't let someone in their house right now because they're fearful that they could get infected. All of that stuff is at play. And so if I negotiated my transaction to a win-lose with all of the uncertainties, here's what I'll share with you. The minute something comes up that's different than what was agreed to, whoever the losing party was, the one who felt like they lost in the negotiation, will use that as their way to get out. And I want to really be clear about that, because our best opportunity of getting to a settlement is when we've got a win-win negotiation complete. Now, what's that look like? There's really some key distinctions. A win-win is integrative, right? We're working for solutions. A win-lose is combative. A win-win is collaborative. A win-lose is one-sided. It's our way or the highway, final and best. We won't talk to you any longer. That's kind of a win-lose in many cases. A win-win is positive. A win-lose is adversarial, kind of goes with the one-sided. A win-win is trusting. A win-lose is non-communicative. Now I'm going to stop there for a moment and look at the first 4 I've got up there on the win-win side. Integrative, collaborative, positive, and trusting. I want to be really clear in this distinction. I would never tell you not to fulfill your fiduciary obligation to your client. Your fiduciary obligation to your client says you put their needs above all others, including your own. That's the definition of a fiduciary, right? And yet I would assert that you could be a fiduciary and put their needs above all others and still be integrative, collaborative, positive, and trusting. It isn't like you can't be. We have to be very clear about what we can and can't communicate, but we could still do that. So that's the first piece. On the win-lose side, combative, one-sided, adversarial, non-communicative. In this day of our history, where there's so many unknowns, the lack of communication between client and agent is one of the biggest opportunities to have things fall apart that I've ever seen. And I always think about it this way. Because there's so much uncertain, if there's something I can do as an agent to bring certainty to my client, do you think I put their mind at ease, at least on that piece? And many of you have probably experienced this since this began, like people who've been relatively normal in their emotions tend to blow up pretty quickly right now. Like they have a hard time managing them. And I think so much of that is because there's so much unknown. So, I want to be communicating. I want to be respectful. That's a win-win versus demanding. That's a win-lose. I want to be explorative versus ego-driven. Now, there's my next kind of major point. When I talk about explorative, I'm of the belief in a negotiation where I like to make certain that the other negotiator doesn't have to know that I'm the smartest guy in the room. Because when I have to feel like I'm the smartest guy in the room, that's ego drive, right? Like I have all the answers, you should listen to me. Actually being explorative is kind of being, there's a phrase I learned years ago that was dumb like a fox. I know this will date me, but I'm going to use the example anyway. There was a TV show back in the 70s called Columbo. And Columbo was a detective played by an actor named Peter Falk. And he was famous for, he was always really rumpled in his trench coat and disheveled hair and all that. But he was famous for, acting dumb like a fox, in my opinion. That was, he would ask just one more question. And he would get the person he was questioning so frustrated, they would give him the answer and that would solve the crime. And if I was high ego drive, meaning, I've got to be the smartest and you got to know that I'm 31 years in the business and in 31 years, I've never blah, blah, blah. That's ego drive. What if you were being explorative and go, help me understand this? I'm not sure if I really get how we're trying to put this together. You'll get more information and it's going to help you do a better job for your client. So that's a key piece as well. Win-win is sharing, again, keeping in mind what your fiduciary obligation is. Win-lose, though, is competitive. This is a competition. That's not what this is. I always think foundationally to what we do in our business, I learned this years ago, and they said, as a real estate agent, our job is to help a buyer and a seller get to agreement. That's really where it starts, isn't it? That's our job. It's to get them to agreement, and then it's to get it to settle or closing, but that's our job. And so in a win-lose, if it's competitive, maybe we're not going to ever get them to agreement, or we may not ever get it to close. And so that's the other piece of this. And finally, win-win is solutions-oriented. Win-lose is divisive. So again, what I would just recommend to all of us is we keep in mind that that left side right now, and in this time especially, is about win-win negotiation. When we get to the end of the negotiation, both sides felt that they got treated fairly, and what they negotiated as their agreement was equitable for both. Because if you do it just the opposite, the minute something comes up, the person who felt like they lose will try to get out. And they do that. And it's not only in this time, it happens at any time. So I want to take a look at the poll for just a second, because we're going to go to another big point. But I want to just kind of see where we're at with that. So I'm going to close the poll out. Let me just see where we're at here. So let's see. Yep, there we go. Let's see if I can get the results to pop up for us. It says share poll results. Do you see the results there, folks? Yeah. All right, and I'm looking away because I've got a monitor set up here because the way this all works. So I apologize that I'm going over here, but it says, yes. So, wow. So 98% of us are still practicing business. That's what I wanted to get a sense of, because in some parts of the country, that's a much lower number. And let's see, 25% of you have done at least one deal, 21% has done two or more. Let's see, 6% 4, and we've got 2% have done 5 or more. So that kind of a spring market for some of you. You know, it's really interesting in that I was just on the phone with a mega agent in Central Illinois right before we started this, and I was asking him how things were. And he said, we've got 40 closings happening in the month of May. He said, we're busier than we've ever been. And I said, that's awesome. I said, what is happening for the rest of the agents in your market? He goes, there's a lot of them who aren't doing a thing. And so that's why I always want to get a sense of where people are right now, because you're doing it. And I want to congratulate you while you're in doing business. It's just different, isn't it? We've just kind of changed the way we're doing things, and yet we still can help them. So I love that. This will help me for the next part of this conversation too. So thanks for answering that poll. So let's talk about this. When I said that negotiation, I think is where we have our opportunity to really shine as real estate agents. And here's what I mean. I think it's where you have the ability to justify your commission. And in fact, I think in doing it well, you could be asking for even more. And I think anytime we hear about this pressure on commissions, it's because well, Gary Keller said this, that price becomes an issue in the absence of value. So where could we improve on negotiation? Well, NAR surveys home buyers and home sellers every year, and they asked last year, this is 2019, what did the buyer want most from their agent? And 52% said they wanted you to help them find the right house. Well, that makes sense, right? That's what they're buying. 13% said negotiate the terms of the offer, and 11% said help with the price negotiations. That's 24% on negotiating. That's a strong number. Now, that number's been going up on the buyer's side in recent years, and it kind of makes sense to me because in most of our markets, it's been a really strong seller market, right? That in many cases, maybe you're in multiple offer scenarios if you're working with the buyer. And so helping a buyer succeed and get their offer won is a negotiating strategy. And so the fact that that number is going up is helpful, and it's encouraging for me because of the market of the moment. But this is the other side of that, though, and I just want to look at what sellers said. Look at what they said they wanted from us. Negotiations was way down here. It was 6% of sellers said they said you bring good value in negotiations. You know, helping market the home was 21%, sell it in a time frame was 20, 18% was priced competitively. Now, I might argue that pricing it competitively is a negotiation, right? For many of you, that it is part of that. But then 6%, and I look at it and go, there's some opportunity for us to increase our skill set here. Because, and I'll tell you from my observations and what I've seen in many markets, there are a lot of real estate agents, and I know this won't make me very popular when I say it, who are lazy. There's a lot of agents who are lazy. What do I mean by that? Well, the market of the last couple of years, where it's a strong seller market in many of the price categories, those are the agents who take that listing on a Wednesday, they pop it on the MLS, and they shout all over social media on Friday that they got an offer and it only took 2 days to sell a house. Now, unless the seller needed it to move that quick, I think that was a lazy agent. What do I mean by that? Well, you know, one of the strategies we've been using for the last 4 years with my team is, and this doesn't a one size fits all, yet it works for a lot of the listings we take. We'll have a strategy around it where we'll list it early in the week. We'll put it out on the social media channels, what's allowable for us to do via our MLS and NAR code of ethics. We'll build momentum and excitement around it. We'll say the first showings are going to be at noon on Saturday of any showings, and then noon on Sunday. And then we're going to look at all offers on Monday night or Tuesday night. And over and over and over again, what we're ending up with is multiple offers almost every time with my sellers, that they now are in the driver's seat and they can negotiate the strongest terms and conditions based on the multiples they've got. Now, does it happen every time? Absolutely not. And so you've got to be careful with that. However, I'll say, you know, here's a strategy that's been working pretty well for us. I can't guarantee it will always work. Would you be willing to do it? And that strategy, you know, takes a lot of work on our part, doesn't it? Because it's about building up momentum, and it's about servicing open houses and showings and all of that stuff for that window of time to put my seller in the strongest position. And those agents, unless, again, that seller wanted a fast sale and didn't want to have to deal with much, that they may have left money on the table taking that first offer only. Now, again, keep in mind, that's market at the moment. We're still seeing it, though. Here's what's really interesting to me. Even through this last 52 days, up until now, my average sale price is about $280,000 in the market I'm in. So up to $500,000, which is that move up buyer market, we're still seeing multiple offers on new listings that come on the market in good condition, priced correctly. So even during this time, so we still have that opportunity for this. I think we can increase that percentage of value in us as as agents if we would stop being so lazy. Stop being so lazy. And that's not you guys. You're here learning more about how to improve your skill set, yet there's a lot of agents who aren't. And so this is what gives you an opportunity, I think. Now let's talk about it from a business perspective. Kind of a simple drawing I've got up here for you, and that is, what is this all about? Well, in our world, we have a buyer that wants to buy a house. Ideally, they have to have money, funds to do it. We've got a seller who needs to, who wants to sell a house, and they want to get paid something for it. And in between those two scenarios is what we will call the gap, right? And it's a gap of price, terms, and conditions. So after the negotiation, we've got a happy buyer. They have the house. They've paid that money to that seller. That seller's happy, and we've created a win-win ideally. Here's the takeaway on that. And this is a quote I got from Jackie Ellis, who's a mega agent down in Boynton Beach, Florida, just south of Boca Raton. And she said that gap is how we stay employed. Love the gap and be thankful for every negotiation. See, I think this is where we really can earn our money, and this is where you can build customers for life, and you can justify the commissions you earn and even more when you learn to love the gap and you get masterful at this piece. And in that, you're creating win-wins, right? So it's a winning feel for both sides, and that is as much art as it is skill. And that's probably why this is such a challenging thing for most real estate agents, because it isn't about go take this class and you'll be incredible at this, right? There's more to it. So it's really a blend of both. It's a combination of mindset. It's a combination of skills that you build. That's the science. And then it's the experience that you gain or that you go out and gain to get great at it. And so let's break that down a little bit. So let's talk about mindset for a second. So mindset, you've got to adopt a win-win attitude. If you don't start the negotiation with that idea that your goal is to get there, it won't work. Now, with that, I also would say set the expectation for your client that that's what the goal is and why. So that always begins right at the beginning of any interaction with the client, whether it's a buyer at a buyer consultation or whether it's a seller during the listing presentation. I always talk about why the goal would be to go to a win-win versus a win-lose. So I want to make sure they're on board with me too. It's also about having a healthy ego. Now, healthy ego, I talked about briefly earlier. Again, that's not having to be the smartest. That's not having to look like you're the best. This is to say, I'm going to do what's best for my client. Because remember, my fiduciary obligation is to hold their needs above all others, including my own. And so sometimes it is about being subservient to them if it gets us the desired result. It's also about being committed yet not attached to the outcome. Now, this is an interesting one. And I learned a statement years ago from a sales trainer that I worked with who said, show up, tell the truth, and don't be attached to the outcome. That was like the mantra they taught me to live by. And I love that. Two things with that. Number one, tell the truth is a great one. And I shouldn't have to say that in this industry, yet unfortunately in our industry, we have to, don't we? I always think about it this way. Mark Twain said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said to anybody. And so when I get going with a lot of real estate transactions, it's hard to keep things straight. So if you didn't tell the truth, you're going to mess up somehow. So tell the truth, and then not being attached to the outcome is a strength in negotiation. Now, how do you not get attached to outcomes? In my world, it's you get enough going in your pipeline, you're lead generating and following up and prospecting like we talk about all the time, so that even if this transaction doesn't come together, you'll be okay. Now, where I think agents get really attached to the outcome is where this transaction is the only thing they've got that has a chance of generating any revenue for the next 3 months, and it's going to be their car payment, their mortgage payment, and making sure they can eat. And then they get very attached. And you weaken your position as a negotiator when that happens, and you do a poor job for your client when that happens. So here's my advice. Don't let yourself get there. Never put yourself there. And it's easy for me to say. I share with you, though, that I know it because I've been there at times as well. And I always know that when I found myself there, it's because I wasn't doing something about 3 months before, mainly lead generation, to keep my pipeline filled. So just keep the pipeline filled and you'll be fine. And then finally, you got to be professional, open-minded, and solutions-oriented. I think one of the best things we can always do for our client is come with options for solutions. Here's the scenario. Here's the challenge. Here's 2 options that I've seen work. Which one would you like? What else could I explore for you? That's where you bring your value. When I put problems on my clients' laps, I've lost value if I don't come with some solution. So it's always about trying to work through and find what the solutions could be, and your value increases. Then finally, it's about being patient, calm, and emotionally controlled. Circle, underline on your notes, whatever with this one. This is one of the most powerful techniques in negotiation that most of us can ever adopt and master. I've learned that the more worked up the other negotiator gets emotionally, the calmer I stay, the better the outcome will be. And a lot of times what I found myself saying to the other negotiator, being the other agent, I'll say, you know, they're ranting and raving about, we won't agree to that, we won't do this, and we, and we, and we, and we, and you guys maybe don't have any negotiators like that in New England. I'll just say, excuse me for a moment. I said, help me understand this. Are you buying the property? And they'll go, well, no. And I go, oh, I'm sorry, because everything you said, you kept saying we. And it's not about that. It's about your client. And so staying controlled emotionally. And I see in the chat box, you're asking when I'm going to get to the stuff specific to COVID-19. This is foundational, though, that has to be there. So just bear with me for a moment. And we're going to wrap this conversation before 2:45. So we'll be good if you can just stay with me for a few more moments. So thanks for that request. And this sets it up. Keeping your emotions between the lines. I would assert that this is about COVID-19. So that's the first major one. Because people are so raw about the unknowns, that the more calm I can stay and the more solutions oriented I can be, the better you can serve your client. And so that's the piece of the puzzle, first and foremost, is that. We're going to talk about some skill sets next. First one is you got to know the win of all the parties, especially now. Now, here's the thing. In this time, are there practices that you're doing differently or that you would offer to your client specific to a seller that would make a difference for them? And let me tell you what I mean by that. One of my agents took a listing this past week. They were in competition with 2 other agents. And they said, because when we sat down with that seller, now sat down was in this format, they're doing everything via Zoom. She said, we addressed COVID-19 and any concerns they may have as a seller around protecting themselves during the time of any showings or viewings. And we gave them options. Option 1 was to say, you know, we have the ability, we're in a strong seller's market, where we could say, we will not allow any physical walkthroughs of the property until we've accepted an offer. And when we accept the offer, we'll allow for 2 or 3 days, a reasonable length of time for the buyer to come physically do the walkthrough and either say, yes, I'll move forward with the transaction, or no. So we can avoid having anybody in your property physically during the time of marketing. And you know, when I floated that idea out about a month ago, I had agents going, how no one will do that. I said, well, why wouldn't they? Some of you were in the market coming out of the recession when the big banks that had all the REOs would say, we'll only entertain offers if they've been pre-approved by our bank, and people would get pre-approved, wouldn't they? So you're in control, you could do that. So that's option 1. Option 2 would be that we're going to do virtual open houses. And here's what this looks like. We're going to do it on the Zoom platform. We're going to live stream it to Facebook. We're going to market it out to like we would any other open house. I'll be here in your property with what I need to have so that we can do the virtual walkthrough and we can answer questions and people can say it that way. Matterport. Some of you using Matterport. They'll do a 3-dimensional. That's part of most of the basic packages now, where you can put it in virtual reality and put your mobile phone into a VR viewer. By the way, Google makes a device called Cardboard, which is as little as $4. It's a VR viewer. You slide your phone in and you can walk through in virtual reality. So those are the options that we're giving sellers now to say, would that work for you? Backing up, my agent said, we took the listing because the seller said the other 2 agents didn't address COVID at all in their listing presentation. They were going to treat it like anything else. And they just said, we can't do open houses because of COVID. Come with solutions. Know your wins versus their wins. What I mean by that is find out what the other party's wins are and then know what yours are. And how do you find those out? You ask. If there's ever a point in time, and by the way, most agents have been lousy at this for the last 10 years anyway. If I'm representing a buyer and and I know they have an interest in the property, I'll attempt to reach the listing agent and ask, what's important to your seller about this transaction? Don't assume it's only price. In a competitive market, there's other things you could do that could sweeten your offer such that your offer is the one that would get taken or negotiated at least or looked at. So find out, make those calls. Now, a savvy listing agent on the other end may not tell you, yet there are agents who will, or there are agents who understand it's about a win-win. Find out what the roadblocks might be before you get into the negotiation. Plan that. Find out what the little wins are. Little wins could become big wins. A closing date that's ideal, a settlement date that's ideal, leaving a piece of play equipment in the backyard because they don't want to take it to the condo they're moving to or have to dispose of it. Little wins like that could make big deals in these negotiations. Minimums. Now, minimums are an interesting one, and this is one, and this time I think is really important, and it comes to us from your backyard at Harvard. Harvard School of Business has an acronym called a BATNA, B-A-T-N-A, a BATNA, B-A-T-N-A. B-A-T-N-A stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement. I'm going to put it in the chat box for you because I want to just break this down a little bit as to what we mean by this. Alternative to a negotiated, I talk to myself, negotiated agreement when I type. So here we go. BATNA. That's where we get clear with whoever we represent what the lowest agreement they would accept. I'll use a seller as an example. So we've got a seller. Maybe your market is shifting, and the price that you put it on the market at a month ago is now not the price that the market's telling you will cause it to sell. I'd go out to the seller. I said, Mr. Seller, we've had no activity in their home over the last 3 weeks. And they'll say things like, well, it's that COVID thing, right? And you'll go, well, no, because there's a lot of other homes selling. In fact, I brought the data with me. And so what I think it's telling me is that the market has moved and we're not in the market any longer. I'm amazing at negotiation, and I can do that when I have offers to work from, but with no showings and no offers, there's nothing I can do. Here's what I'm going to suggest. And by the way, remember, I'm your agent, so fiduciary obligation to you is to keep everything confidential. I want you to think about what the lowest price would be that you would accept to get you where you want to go in this time you need to go. Now, this works as long as motivation is high. By the way, it only ever works if motivation's high with sellers anyway, for the most part. And I'd say, so just think about that. And they'll go, well, why? And I want you to tell me what that is. And they're like, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm like, well, I'm your agent. I won't tell anyone. I need to know. And so that if they do agree to that, which works, if you set this up correctly, they'll say, I won't take anything less than 485. Got it. Okay. So we're at 525. Here's what I'm going to suggest. Let's drop your price to just above 485. Now, nothing's going to force you to accept an offer that isn't going to work for you. However, I believe at that price, we'll probably draw some offers, and let me see what I can do as a negotiator once we start drawing those. That is a bat. Now, yeah, so someone put in the side box about Chris Voss. Yeah, Chris Voss wrote a great book called Never Split the Difference. A great book, actually about 4 years ago, hit the bookstores. A really good read. I'm going to talk about him in a moment, actually, so I love that you have that there. And that's a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What are the minimums? What are the minimums with your client? And then let's work from that. And the quote I've got is just place a higher priority in discovering what a win looks like for the other person, and you'll have more success. Second skill, you got to perfect your questioning and listening. I think as agents, most of us are lousy at asking questions, and we're even worse at listening. You got to ask questions, get deeper to uncover what it is that's most important, especially in this time for whoever you represent and the other side, and then listen purposefully to their answers. There's a technique called going 3 deep, right? So when they say, I'll say to a seller, why do you need to sell right now? And they'll go, because I've got a job offer in Dallas and I have to be there by August 15th. If I just left it there, I'd probably miss some opportunity to really find out what's the most important thing about this, because August 15th isn't that far away. And so I'll say, so let me ask you this, what's important about being there by August 15th? Well, the kids would start school if they go back to school, if they convene school again. We want to get them settled in the neighborhood before that so that they're not as uneasy about this whole move. Great. So what's important to you about that? I want to get, and so now I'm going to learn what it really needs to be in order for them to find this as a success. Then I've got to set expectations, both with the buyers and with the sellers. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Buyers somehow believe right now that sellers who are on the market are desperate. And so a lot of times we're seeing offers coming in as really low, thinking that this is the time that they're gonna get that great deal. That's not true in most markets. I don't know if it's true in yours or not. It's not in mine in most cases. And so we've got to set that expectation. And then we also have to set it with the other agent. The other negotiator is a big deal, guys. And I think the better we can manage our expectations between that negotiator and yourself, the more opportunities you're going to have to be successful with this. Here's the thing I learned years ago, and this works so well, especially in this time of unrest and unease, is I did this right to the left here of my desk. I've got a whiteboard, and I wrote this on my whiteboard about 4 years ago when I first heard it. And it says, never end a conversation without saying this. Here's what's going to happen next. Here's what's going to happen next. And that's no matter who that's with, what this scenario is, always give them some level of certainty about what the next step will be. And then the key to this is you've got to fulfill on it. And in doing so, you're going to put them at ease, and in putting them at ease, you're going to have better outcomes. So when I talk about the other co-broke, here's just one script I think is going to be really helpful if you haven't begun using it. We have a bold law as well that says people will grow into the conversations you create around them. People will grow into the conversations you create around them. So I don't know about your market. I think most markets have that agent who has that reputation of being a jerk. Hope that's no one here on the call, but there are some agents like that, aren't there? Or worse yet, there's that agent who thinks that in a transaction, they have to create a problem so they can solve it so they look like a hero. And I have some of those. And so here's what I've learned. I'll say if they grow into the conversation you create around them, when I'm beginning the negotiation, I'll say something like what I've got on your screen. I'll say, I'm so excited to present this offer to you. I've only heard great things about how fantastic you are about putting deals together, and set that expectation with them. Now, I've had it happen once where I had the agent, when I used the script, say to me, I don't know what you heard, I'm a jerk. And he is a jerk, and he wears it like it's a badge of honor. And I know that about the guy. He and I actually get along pretty well because we've dealt with each other a lot. Most agents, though, all of a sudden start showing up differently. And when I get him to show up differently and better in the negotiation, I end up helping my client. And that's underlying it all what this is all about. I'll show this to you just quickly. This in my mind, this kind of spells this out. I think the other thing that happens is we have a hard time separating the negotiation from the person. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I've been in negotiations where my client is certifiably crazy. And no matter what I could or couldn't do, I could not get something to work that would have given the other side any chance at all about success. And what I've gotten clear about is that when that happens, it's not the negotiator's fault, is it? It's the client. And so what I wanted you to think about is this. There's a little cartoon I want to show you. It comes to us from Looney Tunes about the wolf dog and the sheep. The sheepdog, wolf and the sheepdog, let me say it correctly, and how they are when they're working, when they're in negotiation, they're at each other. The minute it's over, though, let's see how they treat each other. Let's just watch this.
I punched you in, Sam.
Well, gee, thanks a lot, Ralph.
Whoops.
Shaw. Well, better luck next time, Ralph.
Oh, sure, you can't win them all, you know. Thanks. Nice day, huh, Sam?
Yep, good to be alive, Ralph.
So my question is that how we treat our co-brokes? Do we separate the negotiation from the rest of this business? And if you don't, let's start looking at what that could be or look like. Last thing under the skill set, you've got to become the expert in your market. You've got to be studying it. Your markets are shifting just like mine are, sometimes almost daily. And so that idea is, study your MLS. Be watching what's happening and know what's happening from a price perspective, from a terms and conditions perspective, and also an offerings perspective of what you can offer during this time to clients that would help them be successful at what they need to have done. We've got some great tracking tools and some great resources within Keller Williams, and I just want to make sure you don't forget about those tools that you've got to demonstrate that you are an expert, and you truly are. So that's the idea behind that. And then finally, I just said this, negotiation is an honest conversation about the type of market that exists. Markets shift. Your market may be shifting. It's the chance to have that conversation with your clients so you set the right expectation. Last thought of this, and I'm going to get into some standards of practice during this time. Do not assume that it's only about price and only price. It's the biggest mistake most negotiators make who are untrained. It's about all of the terms and conditions, especially right now, right? So closing costs, closing date, lease back options, earnest money and option fees if that's a standard in your market, conditions for social distancing. Make sure that's part of the conversation you bring in there. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Conveyances of furniture, appliances, home warranty, inspection, repairs, and the viewings and the physical tours. Out of this time, it can even go through to your settlement services or closing as to what you can offer that way as well. Let's talk about, I touched briefly on some of the practices that are happening that way. That I believe that depending on how long this lasts and when they come to a point where they feel like they have a vaccine for us, the concerns around social distancing and viewing and physical property tours are going to be a reality for us. Why not start looking at other ways to manage that could ultimately end up being better for the consumer in the long run anyway? Using technology today for high quality visual tours and virtual tours and 3D modeling. I actually demoed a product that is a virtual reality tool not long ago, actually, that was like walking through the house. The only thing I don't get is the smells of the property. Could that be something you could be testing and bringing out to people? The open house. By the way, open houses, I think it's time that those change anyway. For us to allow strangers to walk through a house for 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon and that be a way for me to build my business, I don't think is equitable or fair to our sellers. And I also know that we have more and more issues with theft of pharmaceuticals from the house, electronics, that type of things. Maybe out of this, we start understanding there's other ways to do this and we can change that. Now, what does it take? It takes strength on our part, though, to hold to a good practice that could still accomplish what a seller might need and what a buyer would be comfortable with. And what I'm asking you to start thinking outside the box and bringing solutions like that and addressing those issues, because I don't know about you, as much as I think, putting on booties, walking around with gloves on, using Clorox and germ-killing disinfectants and all of that is not going to be a fail-safe forever or for always. And so we've got to start thinking about other ways that we can manage that piece of it, and that could become part of our negotiating terms and conditions. And then finally, it's about strong offers. Here's the deal with buyers, the stronger the offer is, the better chance I have of being successful in my negotiation. So don't let your buyers do things that are foolish for the market of the moment. You're the expert, you're the professional. I shared with groups earlier last week that I've learned a lot of things during this time. I learned that I should stick with the stuff I'm trained at. I'm not trained at cutting my own hair, and you'll see that, right? That was my hack job. That's not me. I can't wait to get it back to a professional. That's what you guys do. That's what you need to be strong at, because that's what's going to make the difference in success or not. And then finally, and this goes so strong today as it does ever. In a negotiation, you've got to keep the back and forth of the counter offering to four or less. Here's what our research is showing, that when we hit that fourth round of negotiation, the interest drops dramatically by one party or the other, and the chances of successfully getting to settlement or closing goes down dramatically as well. Got to set expectations. You've got to stay to them, and you've got to counsel your buyers and sellers to that piece, because not doing that leads to not getting buyer and seller together, and it falls short then in their mind because you were the negotiator who couldn't make that happen. So what are the key takeaways in this? Number one, it's and by the way, if you were expecting there was to be something groundbreaking and like masterful in this, it's really a lot of this is right back around to basics. Over communicate. One tactic I didn't put in here, and it's in Chris Voss's book, and I just want to plant the seed on this one. I think one of the worst negotiating tactics that we ever see in our business is splitting the difference. Much like I said, there are a lot of lazy agents who are out there right now because they're getting offers immediately and getting their sellers to accept the first offer because it's in the first couple hours, asserting that that's lazy. An agent that says, let's split the difference is not a skilled negotiator. Chris Voss, the guy who wrote the book, Never Split the Difference, was the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI worldwide. He was global hostage negotiator. And it's a really good visual for me because he said, if we split the difference, someone died. Now, we don't have people die, hopefully, with us in our negotiations in real estate, yet it's the same idea. I think it's an unskilled negotiation, and that's the easy button for a real estate agent to get paid. Is to say, yeah, let's just split the difference. When you know the market and you know what you could do for your seller, it behooves you or your buyer, depending on who you represent, to not allow that to happen. So don't do that any longer. Get better at negotiating so that that isn't the case for you. So any questions on any of the topics I've covered so far about that? Let's see, I love the idea of virtual open house and then scheduling physical appointments. Create a sign for the virtual open house to capture visitor data. Yeah. Well, see, that's the other thing that's so cool. With a lot of these platforms, you can capture enough information that you can still use the open as a way to connect with people and be of service to them and not make your seller leave. One of the other techniques I've seen in this last couple of weeks is that idea with a seller who does have to sell right now is if you believe that doing a physical walkthrough of an open house is what's going to be helpful for that home to sell, see if they'd be willing to leave for a day over that weekend, and then that's when all the showings could occur. And then you would have a professional cleaning service come in and disinfect before they come back. That's another one. And again, I think from a negotiation standpoint, when you offer those options to sellers at the listing consultation, it sets you apart. Because what I'm hearing, and I don't know if you've experienced anything different, a lot of agents and other companies aren't doing anything different or offering anything different to their clients at this point. They don't even have these conversations. And I think it's important that we do. I always say to my agents, first and foremost, your health and safety is first. Your client's health and safety is right there with yours. If we can move beyond that and we can help them, then we want to. If we can't, then you shouldn't, because that's not what this is about. This is about, about helping people if we can, but it's also, you can't do it if you're not healthy. So any other thoughts or questions? So along those lines, I've got one little thing I just want to throw at you quick, and that is, hopefully you've heard about this thing. We've got this program launching next Tuesday called Bold Pivot. And I know there's been a lot of folks who've signed up for it. It's going to be delivered digitally. And I just wanted to touch base on it because if you've missed any info on this, this is about learning the market of the moment and learning the techniques at a deeper level that are working right now. So here's the deal. It's mindset first, selling second. That's what what we're going to be teaching in that program called Bold Pivot. We're also going to be providing, I should say, they were created scripts and dialogues for right now. And those are about care calls. Again, going back to service first, selling second. And what we're discovering is when we're out there talking to our buyers and sellers in our databases, we're able to connect them with things that are helpful for them. And we're finding opportunities for business, whether it's right now or whether it's post-COVID-19. It's about expense management. You know, if you were able to be with Gary Keller back on, it was March 16th, when he did that live stream, he talked about those 4 key areas. Expense management was that big one, right? He said, you got to plan for the worst and be prepared that it could be there. And if it doesn't come out the worst, we're in better shape. So we're going to show you specifically how to cut anywhere between $300 to $600 a month in your monthly expenses right now. Talk about doubling down on leads and how to get even stronger with your connected database. Then 2 other key topics. We're going to share about social media and how you can leverage that in today's world in the right context to deepen your relationship with buyers and sellers. And then it's just about how to get even stronger at the command database. And that's what it is. Now, how it's getting delivered is Tuesdays and Thursdays for 2 hours via a live stream on Facebook Live in a private room, a private Facebook group, I should say. So digital delivery that way, 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time, so 2 to 4 your time. And if you're not able to make those times, it's being recorded, and those recordings will be available to you up to a month after we end. We're going to end this at the end of May, so through the month of June, they'll be there for you. On Wednesdays and Fridays, then, excuse me, you're going to have the opportunity to get more one-on-one with bold coaches in our Coaches Corner. So specific topics, dialogues, masterminding, that type of thing goes on then on the other 2 days at the same time between 1 and 3 Central. And then the Facebook page, I'll tell you just personally, I'm the moderator for that thing. We have over 18,000 people in that page, and it's only for the folks who are in Bold Pivot. There's a lot of resources being shared already there. It's really amazing what's happening there as far as best practices and scripts, dialogues, and skill sets that are working for the market of the moment. And that's happening all the time, and it's being staffed by bold coaches. Right now it's 6 days a week, and we just talked this morning, we're gonna go 7 days with it for the month of May. So you'll have access to that as well. And then the investment for that is just $99. And it's for anyone who wants to make more money, sharpen your presentation skills, work more efficiently. We actually already have this up, how to set up your home office to be most effective. That's one of the things we've shared over in the Facebook group. And then really how to take market share. $99 is the investment for all of that. And it's for the month of May. So it's 4 weeks of what I just described to that group who are enrolled in it. One last thought is, Gary Keller said about market share, and he's proven this over and over again. He said market share that's gained during a shift, which is what we would call this, even if maybe the market isn't shifting, the way of doing business is shifting. Market share gained during a shift will never be lost. And market share lost during a shift could never be given back or gained back. And so our goal here in the month of May is to help each of those who choose to enroll to not have that be them losing market share. So that's where we're going with this. My last thought for you today, and then I'll just open it up for any questions is, Gary's such a strong leader for us. He says it's service first, sales second, and that's our mantra. And I want to make certain we're clear about that. This is not about going out and putting more deals together right now. It's to help those who need it right now. And then it's to make sure you're setting yourself up for the other side post-COVID. He said, survive, then thrive are the phases. Continue to be strong and making sure you're taking care of yourself first is really first and foremost, and that's our personal priority. What we want to do, though, is use this time to strengthen skill set. And ideally, that's what you're doing, being in this dialogue with me today as well. So with that, what I'm going to do is just stop sharing my screen and see all the wonderful faces again, and ask if there's any questions. And you can ask live, or you can go to the chat box. Either way works great. So any questions whatsoever?
Darren, has this been recorded?
Yes, it is. It is recorded. It's being streamed live on Facebook Live, and it'll be there right away because it records it there. And then I will have the recording for this specifically as well. Yes.
And will you have like the PowerPoint? Can we get the PowerPoint?
You can. Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you go over to KW Pivot 2020, it's there already under resources. So you can grab it right from there right now if you'd like.
Awesome. Awesome class. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us. Any other questions?
It sounded like you had said that best and final was not a good negotiating tactic.
You're right. And if I had more time, I would definitely go deeper into that. Yeah. You curious about it?
I am, because, when you talk about the lazy agents not accepting, waiting and accepting multiple offers, it would seem to me once you get multiple offers, you kind of have to go to a best and final type of situation.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. And here's the only thing to think about with that. And your scenario, I get that. I think where best and final became such an overused tactic was when the banks were handling all the REOs they were trying to flush back out onto the market. And, if you think about that, so many of those institutional sellers it was about clearing off their books and not really getting what was best for the asset itself. And that's where best and final became a big piece of our vernacular as negotiators. I think it cuts off all possibilities. In essence, that's what you're doing. Now, a skilled negotiator will say, well, they can say best and final. That doesn't mean best and final. And you know that, Ron, I do too, but not everyone does. What I'll typically do in that scenario, and we deal with multiples often, just say, you know what, we want to make you aware that we're in a multiple offer situation. What I would counsel your client to do is do the best they possibly can. Now, I know every state's a little different in how multiple offers can be handled. Here in Wisconsin, when we practice, we can't disclose the terms of any other offers. And I was a broker in Illinois where we could for years. And so it's still kind of a guessing game. And so then I want the ability as the negotiator to try to improve. Maybe they come back with a better price from this one, but over here, the closing dates are better. Maybe I can get this one to come up on close. So if I ever cut this off and say best and final, too often then as the negotiator, I don't have the ability to go back and try to even improve the offers that came to me. And that's why I don't know that to me, it just cuts off possibility when you say that, because an unskilled negotiator believes that that means that's it. And we know that that's not true. One of the things I will say, you know, during this time, one of the things I've discovered, I'm taking a course from Harvard School of Business for free on negotiation through Coursera. Coursera, and you could pay to take the course for certification, right? So you can have some document, or you can do it for free. You know, use this time for this kind of stuff if you've got a little bit of free time, and see if you can improve skill set. It's fascinating to me to study that at a deeper level, because I do think it's a place where we can justify our value as we get better at that skill. So great question. Someone had asked about participation in Pivot. Yeah, it's a big group. So the one-on-one will not be there, and it's also not bold. So I want to make sure it's called Bold Pivot. So it's the whole goal in this, and what's being created using the course writers and the researchers from KWRI is really to address this market of this moment in our history, to make certain that we're equipping the agents who are in there with the skill, ideas, and tools to gain market share during this time. Like the accountability for my Bold grads, we're not forming teams, we're not doing chants. It's gonna be deliver of some really strong content in those live streams. And then you can break off on the next day with the coaches corners, and you can go deeper with a smaller group to explore and get a deeper understanding of it. And then also in the Facebook group, we can do the same thing. So you could actually grab a coach in the Facebook group and get more one-on-one, and we're all trained on all of the materials. So there's kind of 3 layers to it. And I think about it this way. I went to a big university. The lecture for zoology or biology 101 was 2,000 students, right? So I'd go to the lecture, and I'd hear the professor, and then I would go to labs the other 2 days of the week, and we'd go deeper with a group of 50 students, and then I could go get a tutor if I needed it for more help. And that's kind of the way this would funnel down if as a way to look at it. And it's just the month of May, so it's hard and fast. It's right at us. It's being delivered digitally, so it's wherever you guys probably are today. And it's $99. So, you know, the investment isn't significant. I know every dollar is important. Yeah, I would just encourage you to look at this. Joanna, I love that. Yes, I know they do that a lot. I love some of the negotiation they do on $1 Million listings. She just posted something about that. That part I don't. I do like how they will work and fight to get more dollars for their client if they're the listing agent, or they'll do better for their buyer's agent. And then some of that's just scripted for TV too. So, but I love that. Here's the thing, guys, and this is gonna have to be my last thought because I do have to go to another meeting. Become students of this. If this has piqued your interest, the more you improve your skill set here, the better you can be for your clients. And that's my whole reason for doing this for your region. And that's the last thing I want to say. It's just a big thank you to the New England region. You know, Joanna reached out to me and said, could you do this for our folks? And I'm like, yes, I'm happy to do this. And so make sure you say a big thank you to your regional leadership, your market center leadership as well, because they gave me the opportunity to come do this for you. And with that, it's not too late to sign up for Bold Pivot. Mapscoaching.com. If you go there and go to the Bold tab, you can find it right there for you. And it just says Bold Pivot, $99. What I would encourage you to do is do it now because we have to physically let you into the Bold Facebook group. And what I'm fearful of is next Tuesday at about 12:45 Central Time, it'll be like being at Mega Camp the 15 minutes before Gary takes the stage the first day and you're still trying to register in the lobby. I don't want you out in the lobby. So if you know you want to be part of Bold Pivot, join, go do it now, because that'll get you in the system, and we'll have you into the setup before we get to Tuesday. So with that, everybody, I just got to say a big thank you. Thanks for your time. Great questions. I'm happy you've got my email address. I'm going to put it, let's see, I'm going to put it in the chat box for you quick. If you want to just write that down, feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. You can find me in the white pages too, just darrenk@kw.com. You know, I'm here to help. And I just, again, say a big thank you. Stay healthy, stay curious about negotiation, and we will see you soon, hopefully in a physical space somewhere. So thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Yeah, you
Jack.
too. Yes, you're gonna get sunshine. I know it's coming from my way. So we'll see you all. Thanks for being here. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
my pleasure, guys. Wow, it's a big group. It was awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Thanks for being here. Thank you. I believe we'll be doing more of these. We learned this during COVID-19, at least, so we can deliver content this way. I'm thrilled about it. So,
Thank you. Where are you from again?
Madison, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys.
That was
And I'm gonna have
great.
to go,
Great to
so,
listen to.
see y'all.